Hi, folks of the Literary Gladiators channel. I was about to say welcome to Betwixt the Books, but you're not on our channel. We're on your channel. So, hi, we are Betwixt the Books. My name's Michaela. That's Gretchen. We are taking part in Josh's alphabet roundtable read challenge. We were challenged to the letter T, with the caveat that the does not count. Cannot use the article the. It has to be an actual word that starts with T. And
you know how hard that is?
yeah, I know.
It's really hard.
It's actually quite restrictive, but we landed on reading Tread of Angels by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is a cute little novella. It's actually like squat and cute and shiny. That's where we landed. We were going to read tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, but both of us disliked it so much that we DNF'd it and had to pick up another one. So we've done our work. We've done our work for this challenge. Tread of Angels it was. I'm going to let Gretchen do a description of it because she's much better at that than I am. My ADHD makes that disjointed, but Gretchen is great at it, and that's why we're a dual person channel, because we each have pros and cons when it comes to talking about books.
So I just kind of make some nonsense up based on what we read. It seems to work out well. But so this is a novella again. So one of the things that comes along with that is that there is a fantasy world here that we do not get like 100% of the details on, and that's sometimes not okay in this sense. Mostly okay, I think, for my opening. So this is a world in which there are basically two races of people. There are the elect and there are the fallen. And the fallen are the descendants of the folks who fought with Lucifer and lost. And the elect are the descendants of the angels and the people that like continue to stay with God and his angels during the big old fight. That's a pretty big deal in the Bible. So our main character, her name is Celeste, and she is a half-breed, but she does not have the mark that all fallen descendants have. And so she can move through the world and pass as an elect, even though she is something in the middle. But she has a sister whose name is Mariel, who does have the mark. And so she is known as fallen. And so they live kind of like in the like red light gambling district of this particular town, because that's where like the fallen are basically allowed to be. And her sister is a singer, and Celeste deals cards at the same like bar gambling establishment. When the story opens, Celeste is dealing cards and stabbing people who talk ill about her sister, as any like older sister does. When all of a sudden there's a huge ruckus and the angel police shows up, and they're like, hey, somebody murdered a person, and they are accusing her sister of murder. And so this starts as a story of Celeste saying, like, my little sister is not possibly capable of this. This is the police who found a member of like their like super high level, like, order murdered, and they need someone to blame. And they picked the closest fallen person because they're just being fallenist. And then the story gets a little bit more complicated and spills out from there.
Yes. We got a murder mystery, try to save our sister story going on here. And a cute little novella set in a fantasy world. Great. Love it. Super awesome. We usually start our reviews with our overall opinions. So I think we're both going to say we were conflicted here, because there were a lot of things that we really liked about this up until a point, and then it lost everything at the ending, more or less. So both of us were really enjoying it. It was doing a lot of things really well. Even the things that were maybe less subtle. It's not so subtle at all.
Not so subtle.
Not in a bothersome way. It was just, it is what it is, and we kind of accepted that and moved forward. It did lose everything at the end. I finished it yesterday, and I'm still in the feeling of I'm not quite sure where to rate it. Probably somewhere around 3. It might be 3.5, somewhere in the this is a fine book to read range. I think that if somebody wants to try Rebecca Roanhorse without reading like what is it, Black Sun, her like full fantasy book, this might be something to try to see if you jive with her writing style, which I didn't have any problems with for the most part. And I think most of our complaints probably come from the structuring of this more so than like the writing of it necessarily. Although those kind of go hand in hand at some point, but as it stands, good enough of a writer for me. I do think that if you like sort of softer fantasy, if you don't want to get bogged down into a high fantasy book, this might be an enjoyable one for you. And also if you just like stories with like morally gray characters, this might be one for you, because there's a lot of like gray stuff going on in the story. So it was fine. It was okay. We both were kind of disappointed in the ending, but not a bad book by any means.
Yeah. So for those who are not familiar about why Betwixt the Books is an amazing venture between the two of us, what we normally find is that either we have completely opposite opinions about something, or we completely agree on something. And normally that's like a 1-in-1, right? Either we like completely agree that we liked the book, even if it's for like slightly different reasons, or we end up with like, you know, Michaela liked it and I didn't like it. For example, Michaela really likes horror and darker books, and I read a lot of like nonfiction history or like fluffy romance. And so sometimes the things that are valued in those types of genres, like the things that we value as readers, they don't show up in the same way.
Yeah.
And that's why we read very widely, to like find ones that we both enjoy, and then some that, you know, are a stretch for one of us, so that it's like a really interesting take. And when we read novellas, usually what happens is I sit here and complain, and Michaela is like, Gretchen just can't wrap her head around a novella, which is honestly fair. Which is a really fair thing. I'm often not a huge fan of it. It was really only been one time, I think, well, two-ish, that a novella has worked. The one time being when we read a horror novella.
Yep.
Which is not two things I ever like. But that really worked out for us. So when Michaela was like, "Hey, let's read a novella," I was like, "You know how this is gonna go, right?" But I was willing to try it, and I think, you know, I do this really long lead in, because as I was like reading this book, like sometimes when we're reading books for book club, I'll like stop and I'll text Michaela along the way. And I was running, like I was reading this and I was zooming through it and I was really enjoying it. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, Michaela's not going to believe this. I really like this book.
Yeah.
And then the ending happened. And I went, oh, this is going to be a review, isn't it? And we never do spoilery reviews. That's not our thing. But we will talk about like the structure of the ending and what messed us up, because really that's where it starts to fall apart, because oh my goodness, there was a lot happening. I did end up rating this 3.5 stars, because I also know that I don't like books that don't have happy endings. Like I read a lot of romance for a reason, and this is again a book with morally gray characters and a morally gray moral.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that. So if you are like in the mood for a book that will give you happy fuzzies, this is not it. It's not it. And so I left it at 3.5 stars, because I don't know how much about the ending, like I have to unpick it between like I don't like endings like that, but also like the ending was not written in a way that I liked. So, and I'm still just unsure how much of which is which.
Yeah. This is definitely a tragedy. So be prepared for that. This is not a happy ending.
Tragedy.
Tragedy. Hard T.
Hard T. We are T.
Okay. So I mentioned it in my sort of overall review, but it's this is an unsubtle allegory for white supremacy wrapped up in some Bible fan fiction, is how I would describe this story. That it just is. If you asked me what it is, that's what I would say. This is an unsubtle allegory for white supremacy and Bible fan fiction. Some of those things that you heard us talking about probably made you go, ah, yes, I see what this is doing. The whole, this is the virtuous race and this is the fallen, and they can always only ever fail morally. They're just morally gray to begin with, and the virtuous are above any sort of bad doing, like they can't do anything wrong, they're just too good anyway. We have a mixed race character who is able to pass but is not functionally, like, would still be considered of the lower class here. even if she's able to pass in certain situations. And that obviously brings a lot of the common discussion around mixed race when you have books that talk about that, of like not fitting in either place, that if they find out, if the virtues find out that she's not actually a virtue, they're immediately going to be prejudiced against her. And then any of the fallen can see that she doesn't have the mark of the fallen and therefore thinks ill of her because she would think that she's better than them because she has the ability to pass. She has all of these other things that they don't have access to just by the nature of that. So yes, yeah, unsubtle allegory for white supremacy. We have a lot of like commentary on that throughout the book. So be prepared for that if you're going in. Again, didn't hate it. Like, I wasn't mad at how unsubtle it was. Like, it wasn't bothering me. Sometimes when that's happening, it's like, yes, okay, we get it. We understand what you're talking about. But it did not have that in this for us. So while it is unsubtle, I wouldn't say it was poorly written.
Yeah. And I think that was one of the things that I latched onto right away when I was reading, because normally with like a fantasy novella, whenever we've tried to read these, I end up crabbing at Michaela. I'm like, there is something being like, there's something in this world or something in the characters that I don't get. And it's like, this is not explained and I don't get how this works, or like, how does the magic work? How does this work? And I mean, I think part of it is that it is an unsubtle allegory. So you're like, I totally get the dynamics here of what is going on.
Yep.
But at the same time, I think it does a really good job explaining like the caste system and explaining, the city, the world, and obviously really quickly, because the first chapter is that her sister is arrested. You then have to understand how this world's justice system works as well. And I thought that like that was really well done. And it wasn't like I was like, how does law?
Yeah.
Which obviously this is also like kind of a commentary on as well. So yeah, I thought that this book did a really good job of explaining its various like character, culture, class things in a way that could it have said more? Sure, but it didn't need to. It rolled really smoothly into the plot and the action. With that being said, I think one of the things, and this is going to be important when we discuss like the pacing of the ending, is that in the writing of this first bit, I felt like a lot of upcoming events were pretty well telegraphed. Like, it's like the Chekhov's gun thing, right? So there's a gun that's described on the mantle, and a character later on will use it. No guns, but like it's the same idea of like something is brought up or something is, and I was like, oh, that's going to be important later, or
Yeah.
this is exactly the opposite of what is being said, or like it was like
Yes.
very obvious. And again, it's not in the sense that it like I wasn't enjoying the book. But it's important that we say that about the front half of the book, because the second half, like the back end of it, goes the opposite direction.
Yeah. I would even say it's more than half. I want to say it's like 75 to 80% is like pretty, like you're following it along and you're like,
Yeah.
I can see where this is going. I see what this piece is for. I can see all of the pieces of the machination coming together.
Yeah.
And then that last like 20 pages is like it all falls apart in a way that is mildly frustrating and leaves you kind of being like, why, what is going on? I thought I knew what was happening, but not in a like, oh, you got me kind of way. It was more of like this doesn't feel genuine anymore because of how it was structured beforehand. When it comes to the pacing of it, that also feels like we were like going through this slow build of like a lot of stuff is happening, okay, and then it like ramped just off the screen, just like huge high spike of like everything's happening in 20 pages and now it's over.
Again, this book is 200 pages long.
Yeah.
It's like 210 or something, but it is like 200 pages long. So when we're literally saying 20, we mean 20
pages. Yeah.
We mean it.
Yeah. The last 20 pages. One of the things that I mentioned when we were talking about this beforehand was that I started listening to this on audio on my drives. A lot of my reading, that's what I've been doing most recently, is I have a really long commute, so I sit and I listen to audiobooks while I'm doing it. And when it got to that point, that like last 20 pages point, I had to stop listening to the audiobook because I was cringing so hard at what was happening that I like physically needed the like separation, and I switched to reading it physically at that point when I got home, because I couldn't listen to somebody talk about this. I will say the audiobook is great. Like the audio narrator did a really good job. It was nothing with their performance that made me stop listening to it, and 100% just like me cringing so hard. I was like, I can't listen to this right now. I can't listen to what's happening on the page. I need the distance of it, of like, okay, I can kind of pause and read as I want when it comes to this last couple of choices that were going on here.
And it's not like, again, this book is really good for like most of it, right?
Most of it.
And so you have gotten a really well-rounded sense of many of these characters. And so it's not just the main character, Celeste, who all of a sudden is making decisions and you're like, what? But then there's like other characters that all of a sudden are like, burp. And the thing to me is, because it is like literally 20 pages in the back end of this book, they happen one after another after another. And so not only do you feel like this one choice doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the character that we've come to know for the other side of the book, it's happens really fast. It's left unexplained and you can't even process it. And then it's already moving on to the next thing. Yeah. And it's just like, how did we, book is over.
And the thing is that we know that it was done better earlier, because there were losses and like bad choices made earlier in that first half of the book that had pretty negative consequences, like immediate negative consequences for Celeste. And then you were given sort of some space after that where she's trying to deal with that, but not given to the same at the ending. So Gretchen and I both agree that like if this had like 50 more pages, which is still novella length, 250 pages versus 200 pages, still definitely a novella, it probably would have been a little bit better. It just needed a little bit more space and time to like really delve into these hard choices that were made and the losses that were suffered because of it. All that to say, because of the way that the ending is, the thing that we can't figure out, both of us, neither of us are able to figure out, is what is this book trying to say? And when you have something that is so obviously an unsubtle allegory for something, normally something like that has a moral. It's telling you, hey, listen to this tale, even a tragedy, listen to this tale of woe and learn something from it to take away. And we have no idea what we were meant to be taking away from this story. And I don't think that we're stupid. Like, I don't think it's that we're missing something super obvious, because so much of it was telegraphed. So much of it was unsubtle. Like, it should be hitting us in the face why we read this. What was the point of all of this? And we could not tell you. We could not tell you.
And I mean, again, I mean, I'm not doing this intentionally, but Michaela and I met when we were in undergrad and we were both English majors. Yeah. And having had like the benefit to be in the English Honor Society with Michaela, like for the last 10 years, we are those nerds that like pick apart like the classic. And we're like, in like the really, really sad English major way of like, why are the curtains yellow? There must be a reason. So like, this is something that we do for fun. Right. And so, and one of the things, again, that I love about us, like doing all these reviews together, is that even usually when I have a question about something, like I have something that I caught and something that I missed, and I'll come to this conversation and Michaela will say, oh, I missed that thing you caught, but I caught the thing you missed.
Yes.
And it works out really, really well. But we were talking, I think, for 30 straight minutes before we even started filming this. We got nothing.
Nothing.
So if you have read this, or you do read this, and you figure it out, could you please drop us a line? We'd really like to know.
Yes, please tell us what it was all for. What was the point? Why?
Especially when an ending is this sad. Yeah. And I'm just like, again, I don't like sad endings. And if you had told me before I started reading this that it had like it was a tragedy, that it had a sad ending, maybe I wouldn't have read it. That's just how I am. Yeah. But I recognize that sometimes that's what a story needs, right? It's trying to tell you something, do something with the character, explain, like have you think something about life. And the only natural thing to do is to end sadly, because that's the story it was telling. And I will accept that. if I understand why.
Yeah.
I do not understand why.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
We got nothing.
We got nothing.
But we completed the challenge. We read a book that started with T.
And I mean, considering how long it took us to find a book that started with T, I mean, as
Yep.
a book that makes a really good review,
Yes.
we certainly had a lot to talk about. So thanks, Josh.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I would have picked this one up anytime soon if it weren't for this. So, yeah, challenges are great. Reading challenges are awesome. Love them. You should try some yourself.
So yeah, in all seriousness, thank you so much to Josh on the Literary Gladiators channel for inviting us to do this. You may have caught, I've did some solo content in the last couple of years for the channel as well, where I showcased how truly bizarre our actual channel is, because we talk about horror novellas like the What Moves the Dead review that I mentioned that I actually liked somehow. I also do history nonfiction. Michaela does fan fiction. We do romance. We do translated poetry collections. Like, you really never know what is going to happen on our channel. And we have a lot of fun with that. And Josh in particular has been such a huge supporter of our channel for, like, it feels like the entire time. I just can't remember a time when Josh just wasn't in our corner. So we're really grateful to him for all of the support and the opportunity to share this review with you. So again, find us if you've read this or if you decide to read it and you figure it out, because we will be eternally grateful. Thanks. Bye.